Tara, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you on. We have been connected for years now. We first met on Instagram, and I just feel like throughout the years we have consistently seen eye to eye on so many things. We speak the same language in so many ways. We're going to talk about your language of Vedic astrology today, which I am a complete newbie at. But you, just from my lens, the reason I'm so excited to have you on is I just feel like you merge ancient wisdom with the modern world so beautifully without diluting it. And there's not a lot of creators, there's not a lot of astrologers online that are doing that. So your readings are spot on, and being connected with you for so long, I'm just so excited to have the opportunity to finally have you on the podcast and learn more about you and learn more about your story. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Yeah, I can't remember exactly how our paths crossed, but I was always drawn to you and what you were doing. And yeah, I just feel like we have this deeper connection. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So start us out. Let's go right into it. Tell us the difference between Western and Vedic astrology. And I want to know your backstory. How did Vedic astrology find you? How did that become your body of work?
Yeah, so I originally found Vedic astrology through my study of Ayurveda. And Ayurveda is known as the science of life, and it is a Indian medical system. And I came across this system when my mum had just passed away. She had passed away from bowel cancer. And at the time, I was looking for all these answers and I couldn't find them because she was typically very healthy, ticked all the boxes on what it requires to be healthy. And it just didn't make sense to me. And so I was looking for something deeper. And I was already very much on a spiritual journey at that time. And on the way home from her funeral, I was reading this book, and it was a vibrational medicine book. And it mentioned the term Ayurveda. And I was instantly drawn to it. It was, yeah, just as soon as the plane landed, I was searching, how do you study this? What is this? Because it started answering all the questions, how what we know today as more mainstream, but that our mind and our emotions can impact and affect our body and create dis-ease. So first coming into the subtle body, so our energetic body, and then manifesting into the physical body. And so I started to get all these answers. And so then I was just diving headfirst into this science. I ended up studying it. And during that path, I came across Vedic astrology because Ayurveda originates from what we call the Vedas, which are the most ancient texts in existence. And in the Vedas, these systems, ancient systems like Ayurveda, like Vedic astrology, like yoga, and also Vatsu Strasta, which is a kind of like a Indian feng shui. These systems were all integrated and within each other in the Vedas. So they all overlap, they all cross over as an integrated system. And so it made sense for me to start looking into Vedic astrology, which is also known as Jyotish. And Jyotish is Sanskrit for the science of light, because in the Vedic texts, there Jyotish is seen as the eye of the Vedas, so showing us foresight, showing us the path, lighting the path, so lighting the path for the soul when we have become lost. And so during my study of Ayurveda, I was seeing patients in clinic, and in Ayurveda, it's similar to naturopathy in the way that you have more of a longer consult than a traditional Western medicine consult. And during that consultation with the client, it goes for an hour and a half, and you go through all their medical history, but you ask them questions, emotional questions as well as health questions, and you go really deep in these consults. And what I noticed in these consults was how much was coming up from a soul and a spiritual way. And so this is when I became more connected to Vedic astrology, because Vedic astrology really lets us understand ourselves on a really deep level, connecting to our soul. And I sort of studied that because, yeah, I was finding that in Ayurveda, we say the greatest health tonic is your purpose. And so Jyotish was, or Vedic astrology was something that really was helping me with that, helping me understand myself on a level that I'd never understood myself before. And I had been on this massive quest. And so this is when my love for Vedic astrology just took over. And where I am today, the interesting thing is I was always interested in astrology, but I grew up in a, I would, my husband says a cult like religion. I don't like to refer to it that way. But I grew up in this very restrictive religion, and it was seen as witchcraft or something bad. And so there was always that hesitation around it that I had. And even though I had done a lot of unwinding on more of a dogma religion, yeah, that was still there. But the thing that didn't fit together for me was when I was studying Ayurveda and I was pursuing astrology at the same time. I was working with the Western astrology system, because the Vedic astrology system, there isn't much information online in books. It's not as mainstream as Western astrology. And so this Western was the first system that I was introduced to. But I had a background during university. I took some electives in astronomy, and it was my favorite subject. And so when I was doing Western astrology, I already had this really good understanding of space, of the stars, of the solar system. And when I was doing Western astrology, it didn't make sense to me because the Western astrology wasn't referring back to the actual astronomical positions of where the planets were in the constellations. And so I was trying to reconcile that, having that astronomy background, and I couldn't. I was like, this does not make sense to me. And it wasn't until I understood that there was a different system that was Vedic knowledge, um, that was a sidereal system, whereas the Western system is a tropical system. And when I found that, I was like, oh, this makes sense to me. This speaks to my soul. And the difference between, well, the massive difference between these two systems is that Western astrology is based on the equinoxes, and it hasn't taken into account the precision of the earth, which is the earth's tilt. And so, over the last 2000 years, when the Western astrology system was created from the roots of Vedic astrology, it didn't take in account for the precession, which means as the earth has tilted and moved further and further away on the axis, the Western system hasn't accounted for that. And so that's why everything in Western astrology, they'll say that, for instance, the new moon is in Scorpio, but if you look astronomically, it's actually in Libra. And so it just because it hasn't accounted for that shift. And so this is quite significant now because there is a 24-degree difference. And if you look at the zodiac sign, a zodiac sign is 30 degrees. So they're nearly a whole sign out. And so yeah, I'm on this mission to bring back this ancient knowledge because it's so powerful. And yeah, I want people to have the correct reading and understanding that as well. With Vedic astrology, we are more than our sun sign. The Vedic system is a lunar-based system, so there's great importance of the moon, and it represents our mind and our emotions. So yeah, this system just really resonates with me and why I'm so passionate about it.
Wow. Wow. What you said, the purpose being the tonic for the soul. I don't know if that's the exact quote, but wow, I had chills, and it's so beautiful to see how your purpose, what you're investing in learning and teaching and growing in was it just kind of happened. You didn't choose these circumstances, but that was the moment that you started asking the bigger questions, and then the answers started coming in, and then for you to take the elective course, for that to completely shift your path and take you on another route and to explore this. It's so beautiful that when you start asking the questions, the past starts revealing itself. And I'm sure that a lot of people are listening like, wait, I've been studying Western astrology for so long, and I'm just starting to understand that and get to know myself from that Western perspective, and probably resonate with that. I know that for me, like that's what I all of the resources are online. When you search astrology, you're seeing Western astrology. You're not seeing the Vedic resources, and there really isn't a lot out there, because I was doing some research on my chart prior to this recording, and there's not a lot out there about Vedic astrology as there is with Western. And I do resonate with my chart, my Western chart. And as I've just started to dive into my Vedic chart, I deeply resonate with that as well. So how do we, as we're, a lot of the listeners here are those truth seekers. We want to know more. We want to know this ancient wisdom. We want to know the truth. So as someone who's curious and diving into this, into Vedic, but also feels a deep resonance with Western, how do you approach that? Does it make sense that we would resonate with both charts, or is that, confirmation bias? Are we creating um the belief that, well, I'm a Scorpion Western, and then we see ourselves as that, and it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy? Like, how do we decipher the truth between the two when we resonate with both?
Yes, I love this question. I think when you first start going down this path, it can be very confronting because we have that bias of creating our identity from our star sign. And so that can be a identity crisis. And I have definitely had clients that, yeah, have really had to work through that shift. And so I think it is a big undertaking, but it's really great to reflect on how much we have identified with it as well. And having the freedom and the liberation, if there is, big movements in your chart of, wow, I get to dig deeper and like see sides of myself that I haven't seen before, Or am I like that? Or is that just what I've been told that I'm like? So, yeah, it is a really deep process. And yeah, but I think in any system, in the Vedic system and the Western system, it's a good reminder to not be putting ourselves in that box, because in Vedic astrology, it has these really spiritual origins where we want to transcend our chart. We definitely can use our chart to help us on our path, but we don't want it to confine us. We want it to empower rather than limit. So whenever we are placing restrictions on ourselves, I'm a Sagittarius, so I'm going to do it this way. It is, yeah, limiting. So I really like to take the expansive view. And for your listeners that haven't investigated the Vedic side yet, I have to put a link to a resource where you can do that. And yeah, have fun on this journey, because yeah, it can be life-changing.
I think it's an important point to have fun with it and to not take it so seriously, while also using it as a tool for really understanding purpose. And I know for me personally, like I'm always contemplating that. Like, where is purpose leading me? Where am I being pulled? Where am I being called? And if for this to be a tool that is so deeply rooted in ancient teachings, I want to know more. I want to explore more. Like, tell me where I've been putting myself in a box. And if we want to use our charts, our Vedic charts, to get more clear on how to more fully be on path of our purpose, and whether that's creating that or surrendering to that or listening for that, how can we use our charts? Like, where would you begin to start to ask those questions of what is my purpose? What is my work to do in this lifetime?
Yes, we look at the complete chart, but what I start off looking at is the rising sign. And this is the sign that changes the quickest and this is why we need our exact birth time. It changes every 2.5 hours. And so this rising sign is our first house, which is to do with the self and our identity and also the physical body. So, when we go deeper into more of a medical astrology lens, we would look at this for the physical body. And this is typically where we will have more weaknesses that we want to strengthen, so we can use it from that capability. But when it comes to purpose, the rising sign gives us a really good understanding, first of all, on our personality and how we're also displaying ourselves to the world, because that can be incredibly helpful to know, because we don't know how we're being perceived. And so understanding your rising sign is something that I would look at first. And then the other really important placement to look at is your moon sign, because the moon in Vedic astrology is your mind and your emotions. So this will give you an understanding of how you think, what you love, maybe how you interact with people. And then we also look at, in Vedic astrology, what we call Rahu. And in the Western system, this is known as the North Node. And this can give us a really good understanding of our karmic orientation. So, what past lives we have previously had, not to get caught up in our past lives, but it is a really good reference to understand why we are a certain way, why we think a certain way. And that's what all these placements do. It really gives us an understanding of what our innate strengths are, what our weaknesses are, and having that reflected back to you such on a soul level is really confirming. And I feel this is why these types of modalities are really popular, because it allows us to understand ourselves on that deep level. And so, yeah, looking at the past lives, understanding our past lives so that we're not repeating the same cycle in this incarnation. And that's really important, because it's easy to replay and get caught up in that same type of lifetime. And so, really using the chart to highlight and bring us back to, yeah, that soul purpose. And yeah, those are probably the key ones that beginning I would look at.
So the north node and so once you know your north node, then you know your south node.
Yes.
That relates to past lives and would you say like karmic cycles and okay. So I bring this up, it's interesting. So obviously I was looking at my chart prior to this and had such a beautiful recognition of self when I looked at my north node. I hadn't resonated with my north node in Western, and a lot of teachers, especially like business coaches that use astrology and more in the business world, it's look at the north node for how to drive the ship and what purpose is. And I was like, okay, I can see it. But I had a moment, I was relaxing the other night, just like in my space, going through my chart, and it had this deep emotional recognition of self when I read my North Node. And it was an aspect of me that I hadn't given myself permission to own, you
Mm.
know, that um I thought was like missing or that I needed to work really hard at. And then when I saw my North Node, there was a part in there that was like, oh, right. It was remembering like you already have that. Like this is so innate within you. And I don't know, it was such a beautiful, just such a beautiful experience. So I highly recommend, don't be afraid to go and look at your chart and let it challenge you. Let it look at the places where you thought that you were this and that's all you had to work with. And what if there was another side to it? And what if there was a deeper truth to it? And I experienced that specifically with looking at my North Node. And so it definitely felt like there was a lot of like power and energy behind that moment. And so for you to say that that's connected to karmic ties and past lives, it's like, I can feel that. I can feel that power and I can feel that reclamation of this is my path. This is my path in this lifetime. So yeah, it was really beautiful. So
Yes, I love how you phrase that. It's the remembrance. And that's what it is. It's allowing ourselves to remember, because, as we grow up, we are, the world tells us who to be, how to be, and we start to forget. Like it gets heavy, it gets foggy. And this is why it's called the science of light, because it's lighting up like our soul path, because it does get heavy in this existence. It does get hard to connect to where we're going and what we're doing. And it's when you say that remembrance, a lot of my clients will say, yeah, I already knew that on this deep soul level. The only thing is I don't know them. And so saying this to them on such a deep level that they're only beginning to acknowledge in their self is so profound. And yeah, so nothing about your chart should surprise you. It should just be exactly like you said, a remembrance.
absolutely. Absolutely. And it's just such a beautiful tool. So I'm so excited to dive deeper into it. And I will link the resource that you were talking about in the description. Um, so just speaking about like this remembering on this thread, it's it's the path of authenticity. It's the path of remembering who you already are, and taking off the mask. And I think that this, I'd love to know about your journey with this, and the layers that you've shed. And I saw one of your posts recently where you were sharing, and you mentioned it in the beginning of the episode, your background being in more of this religious dogma. Um, I have a strong conservative Christian background, and so I grew up in that these are the rules: fear God, don't ask questions, like this is the way that it is.
Mm,
um, and I had a lot of delayering to do, if you will, to really get to the core of what my truth was, and what my heart, the to open up that channel of communication with my heart, with my body, with my soul. um, and it's that has been the greatest undertaking, the greatest gift that I've ever given myself, because it touches everything in my life. It touches the way that I approach my relationships, the way that I approach my business, the way that I work with clients. It's rooted in the consistent coming back to the essence and to the authenticity, and constantly like guiding my clients back to, what's your truth, right? What is your truth? Because that's where all the magic is, and that's where all the beauty is. And it hasn't been easy. Like it hasn't been easy to take the mask off and look at all the places where I was fearful of being myself. But it's been just the absolute greatest journey. And that's why I love these tools. And that's
mm,
why I love astrology, and I really resonate with human design, and all these different tools, because it's just greater permission to own who I've known that I always am. And I like to say that, like, when I love growth, not for the sake of becoming someone different, but for when I'm growing, I'm becoming more of who I am. But
mm.
it's just there's this bigness and this power and this grace that's always been there, that I allow myself permission to step into, that allows me to, sure, play bigger and create bigger results in my life. And but ultimately I'm constantly becoming more of who I am. And it's such a beautiful journey. And so I'd love to know more about your journey with authenticity, and the layers that you've had to shed to get to this point where you are doing your purpose work.
I love this. So, especially how you phrase that as truth. And I think that is the biggest quest in this incarnation is understanding ourself and, knowing thyself, and all the spiritual teachings that I have had over these years. It always comes back to that, about knowing thyself. And I think that is why these self-development tools, these self-mastery tools, and like you mentioned with human design, why that has really resonated. And just as a side note, there is a Vedic interpretation of human design, so that might throw things out.
I found that out recently. I'm like, wait, a reflector is such a part of my identity.
Yes,
I'm a
right?
manifester, not a reflector. No. Where, yeah,
Yes.
yes, I'm aware. I'm still coping with that.
Yes, yes. And this is another layer and how we attach to that, definitely. And so, I think all of us are questing this deeper truth. And I think now is the time for our truth. And so for me, that journey, very similar to you. And I think why we connect on a deep level is this quest for the truth and the authenticity, and not being afraid to keep on peeling back the layers. Oh, I thought that was it. No, I'm going deeper, going deeper. And so that has been my journey. And a decade ago, if you had asked me about religion, I would have been I would have phrased it in such a negative way. And because of my experience of it as the confinement. But now I really look at it as, like you phrase, like that greatest gift of working through, because without having that religion and without having those constrictions, I wouldn't have been able to free myself from a complete belief system that you've been taught since you've been born, that this is how the world is, this is what the truth is. And then coming out of that with everything that you have known as not being the truth anymore, not your truth anymore, and completely starting from that perspective of, okay, well, what do I believe now? What can I attach onto? Yeah, where do I go from here? And that sent me on this quest of exploring these different, more spiritual and religious. So going into Buddhism and really exploring that. And my mom and I were on this journey together, and we started, going to the Buddhist temples and going, does this feel right? Learning how to meditate. And that was such a huge point in my life, learning that from a younger age. And yeah, just keep on seeking the truth. And I've got to this point where I am now, where not attaching to any teacher, any dogma or anything like that. So there is freedom and liberation and coming back to the truth of ourselves and building that intuition and understanding that nothing and no one can override that knowing within myself. And I think you get to that point when you keep stripping the layers back, when you keep going, is this what I believe anymore? And really analyzing it. And I think that journey through the religious and the spiritual dogmas has really allowed me to do that. And one of the things that I find the the most important is having an open mind. And when we have that open mind, we can, take things on board and then see if it resonates and discern whether we want to take that on. And yeah, so that is my approach now. So I am a truth seeker. Not that I want to box myself, but I am a Sagittarius sun. And so I am always questing for that deeper truth.
Beautiful. What is your moon? Curious.
I am a Virgo moon.
Virgo moon. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. Virgo moon. We were speaking prior to recording, and I was sharing that I had always attached to the Scorpio. The Scorpio is well in Western as my sun, but I get to keep it in Vedic. It is my moon. So I'm a Scorpio moon, Libra, Libra sun. So yeah, it's which makes sense. I get that. Um, but
Yes,
yeah,
you do resonate with your Libra sun, so where your like the beauty and the aesthetics and the harmony and the balance. And the thing with Libra, which is really interesting, is it's the scales, it's symbolized as the scales. But Libra isn't inherently balanced. Libra is always trying to find the balance and the harmony. So always like coming back to the equilibrium is sort of the quest of Libra.
yeah, that makes sense. That makes total sense. Um, and just to go back to what you were speaking to as well, I think it's there's a bravery and a boldness that is required in this and to really ask these big questions. And as you said, the importance of keeping an open mind and getting curious. It's that's like the paradox of it is you have to say I don't know to know what is true for you, and to do that consistently, because that will continue to change and continue to evolve. And so it's, yeah, I really do try to say, I don't know. And I think it's a really beautiful prompt for anyone who's listening right now, and just to kind of like notice where you are like holding on to like this is what I know, this is what I know about who I am, and this is what I know about my personality, and this is what I know about my internal world. And before you dive into exploring your Vedic chart, can you kind of notice where you're already holding on, and give yourself permission to kind of let go and surrender and fall in to an even deeper truth. And that's and recognize that it's fun. Yes, it's fun to use these tools and to explore this, and it's a bold journey, and it takes a strong soul to go on this path and to really ask those big questions. So yeah, just inviting anyone who's listening before they're, because I know everyone's going to be curious to dive into their charts. Where can you notice where you're still holding on to, this is the box that I want to hold on to, and what if that's not the ultimate truth?
Yes, I love how you've articulated that. It really resonates.
Yeah, it's ever unfolding. And I think also just to bring this conversation to more of the niche conversation for these listeners, who a lot of us are the coaches and the healers and the mystics and the writers and the artists and you're sharing your work with the world. um you giving yourself permission to let that continue to evolve, and choose the long game. I know that that's something that you and I have really seen eye to eye on, as well as in this world of everyone being an artist and sharing their work. And it's almost like we're rushing to this finish line, we're rushing to that next milestone. um, can you let yourself play the long game? And the long game is what allows you to really take time to explore your truth, and that's where your greatest art's going to come from. That's where your most authentic content and your words are going to come from. So I really see this being a tool for helping with that as well.
Yes, that soul evolution is something that Vedic astrology always brings me back to. So, this science is very much spiritual as well, in the fact that I consider it a sadhana, which is a spiritual practice, because whenever I'm connecting to this knowledge or someone's chart, it just feels so deep. And that evolution that you're talking about is why we're here. And if you believe in reincarnation, we are on this continued journey of the soul as being infinite. And so, if the soul is infinite and the physical body changes, then in this incarnation, don't we want to be helping our soul evolve as much as we can? And so, asking that question, how can I, how can I get in touch with my soul, and what does my soul want? And where do we want to evolve? Because this work is something that is going to help us in our next lifetime. And so in society, we're so fixated on the material plane because we are in this Maya, this existence. But I love having conversations like this where we can just take that pause and remember that there is something greater, and it's important to, it just gives us a deeper connection. And I think that is what we're all really craving in
Mm,
society right now, because I see it. I see this disconnection, and it's the disconnection of the soul. And so, yeah, how can we live more into, yeah, the soul?
mm. I got chills with that. I like to end with, is there anything else you want to share? If you can just feel into anyone who's listening, but I feel like that was beautiful. That was beautiful right there. Um, to recognize the lack of connection that we all feel is very, very real. And it starts with ourselves. It
Mm.
starts with connecting with ourselves, and then that ripples out into the world that we want to see and we want to create and we want to be a part of. Um, so with that, is there anything else that you feel called to share on this thread before we wrap up?
I think touching on what you said before, like having play with this, and understanding that, yeah, looking at this requires that boldness, but yeah, having fun with it as well. And there is so many deeper layers with Vedic astrology. So I, yeah, want to, yeah, encourage you to look. And so then going, as deep as you want to. So in the Vedic system, each house has its own chart. It's very intricate, and it's a lifelong science for me. And yeah, so just take what you need and delve into it. Yeah, I'm excited.
I'm excited. I'm gonna go dive in right after this. Beautiful. Well, where can we find you on the socials? Also, you mentioned you have a Vedic planner, so tell us a little bit more about that, because I will absolutely be linking that in the description as well.
Thank you, Hannah. Yes, I've just released a Vedic planner. And with Vedic astrology, the astrological new year didn't actually begin until April. And so this is a full calendar until March 2025. And basically, it's all the Vedic astrology dates. So that because I wasn't seeing very many resources around Vedic, and it was all about Western, yeah, I've created this as a resource to help guide you if you're interested in the energy, and working with the energy and having that awareness on a deeper level.
Beautiful, beautiful. And where can we find you on social media?
Yes, on social media, I am mostly on Instagram, which is Tara with double R, Lee with double E, and Ruler, Rullo. Lots of double letters there.
I will
And
link it. Don't worry.
thank you. And Tara Lee.com is my website.
Beautiful. Tara, thank you so much for your beautiful energy and your presence and your wisdom on this podcast today. I
Thank you
appreciate you
so
so
much,
much.
Hannah.
Of course.